Well, hello, Andrew here yet again, and this is episode 150. Yeah, who'd have thought we'd have got here? Well, we're coming to the end of Jesus' journey. Today, this is really the last before we start to head into Holy Week. We're finishing in the last part of Matthew chapter 20, and next week, next episode basically, we find Jesus then moving into the Bethany, Bethphage, Jerusalem part of his journey. So here he is. He's about to head up to Jerusalem. He's crossed the Jordan. They've come through Jericho, and then we pick up the narrative at verses 28 through to 34. As they were leaving Jericho, this is Matthew 20, as they were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed him. There were two blind men sitting by the roadside. When they heard that Jesus was passing by, they shouted, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." The crowd sternly ordered them to be quiet. But they shouted even more loudly, "Have mercy on us, Lord, Son of David." Jesus stood still and called them, saying, "What do you want me to do for you?" They said to him, "Lord, let our eyes be opened." Moved with compassion, Jesus touched their eyes. Immediately they regained their sight and followed him. Now, we probably better know this story as the healing of blind Bartimaeus from Luke. Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus. You wonder if it was even his name. Anyway, we know that story. We know it well. The context is exactly the same. Both stories are at the point of Jesus leaving Jerusalem. In both stories, leaving Jericho. In both stories, he's on his way to Jerusalem for the final time. The main difference, as we're seeing, is that in Matthew, we have two blind men. In Luke, one blind man, and he's given a name. Luke's treatment of the story is much fuller. There's a lot more detail. This is different. Mark's Gospel also has a similar story, except it's given as Jesus is approaching Jericho. What does it mean? I don't know. Luke's account, though, it seems to me, focuses more on the blind man, on Bartimaeus, on his experience, on what's happening with him. It's certainly a simpler story to tell if there's only one person who's being focused on. You have two people you're focusing on, and the story kind of gets distracted, and it loses some of its impact. And I think that Luke has chosen just to focus on the one. I want to suggest that this story, though, as it cuts the blind man back to the bare bones, is focusing more on Jesus' response, on what's going on for Jesus with these two souls. And as I've been reflecting on the story, what strikes me about it is a question that doesn't appear in it anywhere. But the question is this: what is the Father doing? Jesus said that he consistently only did what he saw the Father doing. We see that in him saying that in John 5, I think it is. I only do what I see the Father doing. And the question here is, what is the Father doing? My hunch is that this is a question that Jesus is always asking in his spirit. What are you doing, Abba? What is it you want me to see? What is it you want me to notice? What is it you want me to do here? What is it that you're doing? What is it you're inviting me into? And as he's leaving Jericho, he's about to find out. These two blind men, on discovering who's passing by, start yelling. "Son of David," they yell repeatedly. They're appealing to Jesus' messiahship. This is a title for the Messiah, the coming one, the anointed one, the one who was going to put all things right. This is their statement of faith. they have confidence that Jesus can give them what they need. Now, this may be a sort of kind of serendipitous thing that we would see it as. And yet, I think it's what God is doing. So often, as I've said before, we think things happen by chance, and yet they don't. They are invitations for action, invitations for encounter. And as I'm sitting here, trying to think of what the word is that Methodists have used of old, and it's just not coming to me. But we see God at work in the ordinary events of the everyday. So here they are. Those around them are trying to get them to shut up. To them, these two are an embarrassment. Why do you just be quiet? Just leave them alone. But they know, there's some place within them that knows that this is their God moment. They are probably not going to get this opportunity again, and we know certainly historically they wouldn't. So they are seizing the moment. This is their opportunity for an encounter. And I want to suggest that this is what the Father is doing. So in the story, they come to Jesus. He asks them what they want. We'll have a bit more about that in just a moment. And we read these wonderful words. Jesus was moved with compassion. This is what the Father is doing. Because Jesus is the exact representation of the divine. And the divine is moved with compassion. Father is moved with compassion. Father yearns for the healing of these two blind men. We've encountered this word before in Matthew's Gospel. It's the word splanchnizomai. And it's a word that is only ever in the New Testament used of God, of Jesus, or by those that Jesus used to describe those who act in a godlike way, who respond with that kind of compassion. I'm going to talk about it again to remind us in a minute what it looks like. We see it in the story of the father in the parable of the prodigal son. When he's been waiting for months, maybe years, he sees his son in the distance, this bedraggled, dejected figure. And he recognizes him. He recognizes him even at a great distance. And he is moved with compassion. He gets up, he lifts up the skirts of his coat, and he does a very undignified thing for senior Jewish men and runs out the house and runs down the road to meet his boy. Splanchnizomai. In the old King Jim, it used to be sometimes interpreted bowels of mercy. And that's the sense of it, that the place we feel the most deeply is right in the gut, in the bowel. And it has a sense of this turning over within us. So when Jesus hears these two blind men, everything inside him turns over. He's so filled with compassion, with pain, with a desire for the healing of these two characters. It's the deepest felt response to pain in another that any of us can feel, that would do anything to help. And this is what is happening in Jesus, and this is what the Father is doing. Jesus reaches out and heals them. The word that I was looking for is providence. Providence, that sense that God is at work in everything, in every encounter, in every moment, inviting us, drawing us into life, into actions of compassion. inviting us into a richness of walking with him, inviting us to encounter him in our encounters with others. Providence, this is what Father is doing. It's wonderful, isn't it? You know, so often easy to imagine that God is up there angry and wrathful and looking for reasons to punish. It is not true. It's a lie. It's the worst lie. And here he is, Jesus reflecting the Father's heart. There's a couple more things I'd like to notice before we finish. The first is that Jesus makes no assumptions about what these two blind men want. They'd be obviously blind. I was going to say even a blind man could see it. Well, maybe not quite, but they are obviously blind. It's obvious what they would want, surely. Maybe not. Maybe they're happy with their lot. Maybe they've got an argument between them that they want resolved. It may be a theological thing. It may be relationship issues. Who knows what it is? Jesus makes no assumptions. It's really important. He invites them to tell their own story. And there's a gentle respectfulness in this. He's not assuming anything about them. He's saying, tell me what it is that you want. And he's inviting them to be clear about it, to be able to claim it. It's important they're willing to be clear about what they want. Because at the end of it all, there are going to be no illusions about what happened and why. The healing of these two men meant that they were going to walk into a completely new life. A scary life. A life where they would now be required to work. A life where they now would be actually having to fend for themselves and not living off others. That's actually a big ask, particularly if they have no trade. And so Jesus is clear about being clear that they got what they wanted. Imagine if they had the last thing they'd wanted was to be able to see, and Jesus gave that to them. They wouldn't have been happy. He knows what they want, but he's also making sure that everybody's clear, that there are no illusions here about what happened and why. And secondly, they immediately follow Jesus up the road to Jerusalem in the final week of his earthly sojourn. They walk away into a new life in every way. Uncertain, scary, exciting. They are not looking back. Wow. God bless you.